Hey guys, my name is Leonela and I'm going to present a project from HUC 106. My topic is about why every school in the United States should develop a program about racism. So, what should schools do to stop students from racism at all costs in our country? Let me introduce myself. My name is Leonela. I was born in New York City. In my childhood, racism wasn't as much as it is now. Back then in my childhood, racism between my friends and I did exist, but it wasn't every day or at all times. It was something that it had a control. But today it's so bad. They even start from little kids from second grade to 12th graders are terrible. I could put an example. My own cousin, she is very racist at a short age. And I figure out there's people proclaiming that Black Lives Matters and Americans in at least 1,700 communities across all 50 states. So my thesis is that every child and adult should know about how bad racism can be and how it can affect people. In schools, teachers must educate students to be more gentle with their words so they can avoid racism and further consequences. So let's start off with before and after the pandemic hit us. So before the pandemic hit us, in New York City, there was more people of color that were more likely to report racial discrimination. People of color are more discriminated all over the country. There's data according to the article from the CAP shows us that black people were being at the top, meaning that they were the most affected about talking about discrimination. This comes from decades behind. We weren't able to stop or reduce a big amount of racism against anyone in this country. And this is because we, and as an adult, don't provide enough information and time to the rest in our surroundings about discrimination. This should be a must in school because that's the place where you get educated for a bright future. Another problem is that people's ignorance in realizing that this is a problem. Due to misinformation, discrimination is increasing. Many teachers might think that this is okay to not talk about discrimination because teenagers be hearing this every year and they be like, I already heard this last year, so it's gonna be the same this year. But it's not like that. We have to refresh our minds to think better, to see things different, to have a healthy environment. I seen in my high school that once the meeting was over, they started with the same, with those names that weren't adorable or nice at all. Well, many US citizens believe that black people are criminals and that they're going crazy. The biggest wrong information that parents tell their kids. I can put an example as me. My parents told me that black people are pretty dangerous, so to be careful from them and not get too close to them. But as I grew up, I met very nice dark skinned people that are my friends now. I can prove you that not all of them are bad. And just because a few of them has to pay with that reputation. And with that, talking about that some of them are bad. And just because of those minor amount of people, of black skinned people, everyone is paying for that. And I don't see that fair. Well, in this time where the pandemic has existed, discrimination against black people increased gigantically. Increasement in racism against black people, numbers went up. To the abuse of power of a cop, to a black male named George Floyd. I know everyone should know about this. This happened in Minneapolis, May 25th of 2021. They hold him down like if he was a criminal of a big scene. Three cops being on top of him and one putting his knee on his neck. According to the New York Times, he had his knee about 8 minutes and 46 seconds. The cops tackled him to death. The time the officer had his knee on his neck was enough time to kill him or even execute him. After this happened, many raised because of what racism can get to. So knowing this in school, I did have a small talk about it in class. And from my point of view, it was helpful for some of us that racism is something dangerous and needs to be controlled. I will surprise you that during the pandemic, Asian people had numbers going up like crazy. Let's remember something. The pandemic was a big impact for all of us, but especially those who were blamed without proof and those people who were hurt just because the majority thought it was their fault. So we were having an increase of violence due to discrimination against Asians due to the pandemic. So this increased 81%. That's a big number. And who says that they were attacked violently? And just the 52% were adults, according to the Pew Research Center survey. As you can see, those numbers are terrible. But today it has decreased, and it's been safer for Asian people to walk on the streets now than before, because now they are more informed about it. The ignorance of people think that the virus came from them that year and that the same year they spread it all over the world was totally wrong, because the virus has already existed for decades before the pandemic hit us, linking this to violence. The main character of violence were Afro Americans. They were assaulting Asian people. For example, it happened many times in the train where a black male spitted on a Asian lady in the train. It was a very dangerous act because this could have led into a physical fight and probably making the black male push the Asian lady into the train tracks. And that could happen. That could have happened, and that will be a terrifying news. So this is another thing we could take in mind and think about it, that racism is pretty dangerous. As for kids, for teens and adults. This is another reason why racism should stop, and everyone should start looking at everyone as the same, so kids, teens, and adults can be safe. In conclusion, we are right now in 2021, nearly 2022. We should inform teachers that racism is not something you learn just from the streets or at home, but in school as well. You can learn this. So, in order to reduce, we should make small posters and give small penalties in our school so kids can be careful with the words and start respecting others and not judging them from their appearance just because they look different. Now, with this plan, let's start seeing those changes. Let's see those numbers go down. Let's change kids for a better future, leading this to a better life for all of us. Because we are all the same. A dark skin or a light skin doesn't identify us. We're humans. We're the same. We make mistakes, but we could get up helping each other. So don't see your neighbor as a completely stranger. Because at the end of the day, you're the same. Thank you.